and therefore the novel was banned. And it was finally published in Paris in 1922. And after extensive revision, it was published by Shakespeare and Company. The novel was banned in many countries and allowed publication in the US only in 1933. The novel was first published in Paris in 1922, but US didn't give permission for the publication of the novel, and the novel could be published in 1933 in the US. And in the UK, it was published only in 1936. The novel actually chronicles the peripatetic appointments, the various appointments and encounters of Leopold Bloom in Dublin in the course of an ordinary day, 16th June 1904. The peripatetic appointments and encounters of the protagonist Leopold Bloom in Dublin in the course of an ordinary day, that is 16th June 1904. And the fans of Joyce all over the world celebrate 16th June as Bloom's Day. And Ulysses is actually the Latinized name of Odysseus, the hero of Homer's epic poem Odyssey. And the novel establishes a series of parallels between the poem and the novel, such as Leopold Bloom and Odysseus, Molly Bloom and Penelope, and Stephen Dedalus and Telemachus. And these are the parallels between the novel and the poem. The poem of Homer is imitated in the novel. It is produced in a Homeric fashion. The novel is divided into 3 books and 18 episodes. And the divisions are also Homeric. Part 1 is called Telemachus. The first episode, Telemachus, and the following 2 episodes, Nestor and Proteus. And these 3 are Stephen's need for fatherly care. Stephen Dedalus, the hero in the portrait of the artist as a young man, is also a character in this novel, Ulysses. And in the beginning of the novel, we come to find Stephen. And Stephen has got his parallel in Telemachus. And Stephen's need for fatherly care is found in the first 3 episodes under the title Telemachus. And it is Telemachus' search for Ulysses, Stephen's search for fatherly care. And part 2 of the novel is called the Odyssey. And it describes the wanderings of Ulysses. Episode 4 is called Calypso. And there are the other episodes, all Homeric titles. Up to episode 15. From 4 to 15. The 15th episode is called Circe. And these chapters speak about the wanderings of the hero Leopold Bloom, same as the wanderings of Odysseus. And part 3 is titled The Homecoming. And there are the episodes 16, 17 and 18. The 16th episode is Emmaus. And the 17th episode is Ithaca. And the last episode is Penelope, the name of Ulysses' wife. And it speaks about the reunion of the hero with his wife, who may be faithful or faithless. And when we get into the character details of the characters in Ulysses, we find that the novel tells the story of a day and night in the lives of 3 Dubliners. And Leopold Bloom is a 38-year-old part Jewish advertising canvasser. Once UGC asked this question, what was the profession of Leopold Bloom? Leopold Bloom was an advertising canvasser. He was Jewish, who shows fatherly interest in Stephen. And he has 2 emotional crises. Leopold Bloom has got 2 emotional crisis. The breakdown of his family relationship, the breakdown of his male family line, and the infidelity of his wife, the faithlessness of his wife. He suspects his wife. And the untimely death of both Bloom's father. Bloom's father died through suicide, and the only son, Rudy, and he died days after his birth. This is the break in the male family line, and that worries Leopold Bloom. And he gets brief respites from these emotions during his union with Stephen. Since the death of his son, he has not been entertaining any sexual relation with his wife. He knows that his wife might have a seditious intimacy with Ulysses bullion. But he doesn't question her. Ulysses bullion was the manager of a music troupe, opera group, where Molly Bloom is also a member. Bloom is compassionate to animals. Leopold Bloom, the protagonist of the novel, is very compassionate to animals and to people also. And we find him entering a maternity hospital to see a lady named Mina Porphyry. And there is a chapter called Circe, where we come to find Bloom and Stephen visiting the brothel of Bella Cohen. There are many incidents described in the chapters ranging from 4th chapter to 15th chapter. And Leopold Bloom knows that his wife might have seditious relations with Ulysses bullion. Bloom seems to be very compassionate to animals and to human beings. And we find him entertaining his cat and extending his sympathies to a woman in labor. And Bloom, the protagonist, is every man. He acts as the father and mother to Stephen. And Stephen Dedalus is the main character in a portrait of the artist as a young man, where he is shown from his childhood to youth, and he is finally leaving Dublin to Paris. In Ulysses, he is presented 2 years after the end of portrait. Stephen has been in Dublin for over a year, having returned to sit at his mother's deathbed. And his artistic talent is still unrealized. He is currently a teacher of history at a boys' school, and he is disappointed and moody. And we find his interactions with various characters like Buck, Haynes, and Mr. Daisy in the opening chapters of the novel. The opening chapters of the novel show his external ties in Dublin. Stephen exists mainly within his own world of ideas, and he is a man living with his own ideas, has got his own philosophy. And Stephen's struggles are centered around his parents and his refusal to kneel and pray at the deathbed of his mother. So seemed to him a burning prick of conscience. And Stephen's father also doesn't support him emotionally. In the novel Ulysses, we find him saddened after drinking with Leopold Bloom, and is found crying, consoled by Leopold Bloom. And never in his life he found the need of a parent, and it was Bloom who cared for him. And the third character in the novel, the third important character in the novel, is Molly Bloom. The novel actually speaks about the experiences and thoughts of three Dubliners on a day and night. And the important character in the novel is Molly Bloom. One of the important characters in the novel is Molly Bloom, the wife of Leopold Bloom. And Molly Bloom, like her husband, is an outsider to Dublin. And she was raised in the military atmosphere of Gibraltar by her father, who was called Major Brain Tweedy. And she didn't know her mother. Perhaps she might be a Jew. And she was brought in a male surrounding of soldiers. And she is frank about topics which other people are likely to sentimentalize. And she is a stage singer and practices with men for operas. And she has been married to Leopold Bloom for nearly 16 years. And she is visited by Hugh Blazes Bullion, with whom she is planning to go for a singing tour to Belfast. And it is a known secret that she has some sexual intimacy with Bullion. And the experience of these three Dubliners are described in the novel Ulysses. And the novel can be called a comical novel of multiple identities. And there is stream of consciousness moving from narration to thoughts of the characters. And the first 6 episodes, interior monologues. And the 7th episode, Ulysses, presents newspaper headlines and that are not part of the scene or thoughts of the characters. Newspaper headlines are presented in the 7th chapter entitled Ulysses. And the 10th episode, Wandering Rocks, breaks the narrative continuity. And there is the 11th episode, Sirens. And it is set in a hotel called Ormond Hotel. It uses a language to imitate and mimic music. And the 12th episode, Cyclops. And it is set in Barney Kernan's pub. It combines a monologue in Dublin vernacular. And the 13th episode, Nausicaa, offers a pastiche of romantic magazine literature. And it presents an imitation of romantic magazine literature and interior monologue. And there are many experimental things found in the novel Ulysses. James Joyce came out with his novel Finnegans Wake in 1939. And it is a comic fiction noted for its experimental style. And it was written during his stay in Paris. And Joyce regarded this work, Finnegans Wake, as his masterpiece. And there are 17 chapters which are divided into 4 parts or 4 books. In Ulysses, we come to find that there are 3 books with 18 chapters, and in Finnegans Wake, there are 17 chapters in 4 books. Joyce regarded this novel as his masterpiece. And before the publication of this novel, he kept the title secret as work in progress. And there were the detractors to Finnegans Wake like Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound was formerly a close friend of James Joyce, and it was Ezra Pound who brought out the novel, The Portrait of the Artist as Young Man. But when Ezra Pound found the beginning of the Finnegans Wake published under the title Work in Progress, so he criticized the way of the presentation. And his supporters, he at the time, James Joyce had many supporters and assistants like Samuel Beckett, William Carlos Williams, and others. They published a collection of essays. Our examination round his factification for incamination of work in progress. and the area was discussed in the video on Samuel Beckett. In the video of Samuel Beckett, I discussed with you the question of the support given by Samuel Beckett and William Carlos Williams to James Joyce, and they worked under James Joyce as the assistants of James Joyce. And when the detractors started to attack James Joyce for his novel Work in Progress, they wanted to defend their master and produced a collection of essays under the title Our Examination Around the Factification for Incamination of Work in Progress. And before publication, he kept the title of the novel a secret. And his fame was increasing, and he had a team of assistants to help him, like Samuel Beckett and William Carlos Williams. And when we get into Finnegans Wake, we come to find that if Ulysses is a book of the day, Finnegans Wake is a book of the night. And one way to approach the novel is to consider it as a dream. But if Finnegans Wake is a dream, it's a dream without a dreamer. And there is also a book behind Finnegans Wake. And it is a work of philosophy written by Giambattista Vico, an Italian philosopher, who produced a book entitled Science Nova, or New Science, in 1725. And according to Giambattista Vico, history is cyclical, and each cycle consists of 3 different ages: an age of gods, an age of heroes, and an age of human beings. The same is repeated in Finnegans Wake, the change from one cyclic process to the other cyclic process. Because theory lies behind the structure of Finnegans Wake. Almost every word in the book is a portmanteau page. Famously, the title itself is a portmanteau page, joining of 2 words, mixing of 2 words. And Samuel Beckett and Carlos Williams were asked to find out portmanteau words for James Joyce. The title itself is a portmanteau word, Finnegans Wake. At one level, it refers to an Irish-American pop song, the Ballad of Tim Finnegan, about the funeral of a man named Finnegan who fell off a ladder. So it's an American pop song, the Ballad of Tim Finnegan. And the title can also be read as Finnegan is awake, or Finn again is wake. The title actually doesn't have an apostrophe mark to denote that it is Finnegans Wake. There is no apostrophe mark. In the novel, there is a basic configuration of a nuclear family consisting of a husband, wife, 2 sons, and 1 daughter. The husband is Humphrey Chimden Earwicker. Humphrey Chimden Earwicker, HCE. And the wife is Anna Livia Plurabella, ALP, Anna Livia Plurabella. And the 2 sons are Shem the penman and Sean the postman. Shem the penman and Sean the postman. And the daughter is named Issy. The main character, HCE, Humphrey Chimden Earwicker, the father, owns and runs a pub, and his wife, ALP, Anna Livia Plurabella, supports her husband and raises the children. And the brothers, Shem and Sean, are constantly at war. And the sister Issy is sometimes a whole person, but sometimes she is 7, denoting the color of the rainbow. And sometimes she is 28, the phases of the moon's cycle. And when we get into the novel, the plot of the novel, we come to find that there is a kind of base lodge. At Phoenix Park, H.C. Humphrey Chimden Earwacker, the father, who runs the pub, watches two girls urinating, and he is in turn watched by three soldiers, who spread the story of H.C. found watching the girls urinating, and the reputation of H.C. is shattered. But the man is defended, H.C. is defended by his wife A.L.P. And the chapter 8 of the book, often called Anna Livia Plurabella, is the chapter about the wife figure and also the river Liffey. The river that runs through the center of Dublin is called Liffey. And we come to find two washerwomen wash clothes on opposite sides of the river Liffey. Two washerwomen wash clothes on opposite sides of the river Liffey and gossip about ALP and her life with HCE. As they describe her, they also describe the river. And as the river widens, they can't be heard by each other. And they start to turn out into a tree and a stone. One turns out to be a tree, and the other washerwoman turns out to be a stone. And when we examine the style of Finnegans Wake, so it's funny and often hilarious, making us laugh. And the depiction is unorthodox and experimental. The opening line is a sentence fragment. River run past Eve and Adams, from survey of shore to bend of bay, brings us by a commodious vicus of recirculation back to Howth Castle and environs. So the line seems to be an experimental fragment. River run past Eve and Adams, from survey of shore to bend of bay, brings us by a commodious vicus of recirculation back to Howth Castle and environs. And it means something like the river runs past Adam and Eve's house by the shore and around the back to Howth Castle and its surroundings.